So, hello everyone, welcome back to where the action is, hopefully. I'm Roland Freudenstein. I'm the freshly baked Vice President of GLOBSEC and Head of GLOBSEC Brussels. 8th day in this office, and I have the honor and the pleasure to lead the speed dating format panel on the German election, because we have very little time. And so I'll just briefly introduce our speakers. To my right, Georgina Wright, from who is a senior fellow and director of the Europe program at the Institut Montaigne, one of Paris's leading think tanks. And to my left, Aslan, one of Germany's leading TV journalists, presenters, moderators. And in fact, today I'm the moderator and he's the speaker. So without further ado, let me just introduce this whole thing with a question. Actually, what I would call the new German question. You know, during the Cold War, the German question was the relation between the two German states. The new German question is, can and will Germany pull its weight? Schaffen wir das? And it has so much in common with the old German question, in the sense that, A, it affects the rest of Europe. This is not just about Germany. And B, it's completely open. And I want to first turn to Ali, who followed the campaign, actually interviewed all the major candidates of the German parties. And I want to ask you, the opinion polls and forecasts from the beginning of the year till about the month of July were wildly different already, but they were completely different from what we got on the evening of the 26th of September. How come? What has changed? How has this campaign panned out? Ali, over to you.
Thank you so much. I think you can pretty much shortly sum it up with botched campaigns. Let's start with several for that matter. Let's start with Armin Laschet, who of course was the candidate of the CDU and poised to succeed Chancellor Merkel after 16 years in power. To say that he ran a lackluster campaign, I think is diplomatically put. People did not warm up to him, and most importantly, his own party did not warm up to him. I think he, more than anything, the internal attacks that he had to suffer from his rival Markus Söder, the CSU, but also from other conservative sides within his party, certainly undermined his authority, Roland. And the one thing that probably did him in was, in the summer we had the flood catastrophe in North Rhine-Westphalia, and it just shows, as a journalist, you know this, the power of photos, the power of images, and so basically you have this image where the president of Germany, Frank-Walter Steinmeier, is speaking in very somber terms about the flood catastrophe, expressing his condolences. And then you have a candidate, Armin Laschet, in the wings, and nothing to do with what Steinmeier was saying, but laughing about a joke that one of his advisors made, that a lot of people thought was in poor taste. I happen to agree. Of course, completely unrelated to the flood catastrophe, but it shows the power of pictures and images. And at the very latest, Roland, from there on, his campaign, I think, never found its footing again. Annalena Baerbock, when she was announced as the Green candidate, for the very first time in the history post-World War II in Germany, you had a very realistic chance of a Green Party chancellor. Really realistic chance. And I remember the first week after she was announced, her face, of course, was on covers of all German magazines, of all European magazines. The epitome, that's when you know how you made it, when you're being interviewed by Christian Amanpour. She was on that program, and the sky was the limit. A young, intelligent, dynamic woman with the right agenda, climate change, diversity, and so on and so forth. Well, it turns out, unfortunately for her, that she wasn't quite as careful with her CV online. And, there are very few things than Germans excuse more than a very unprecise CV. And, we as the masters of precision, the Germans did not appreciate that what many perceived to be she inflated her CV. Whereas I think it was unnecessary on her part, because it's clear she was barely 40 years old. It's clear that she's not going to come from this long line of accomplishments. It's clear that she's a young, fresh face. I think that's what was part of her allure. But the plagiarisms of her book, again, you could argue as her advisor, why would you even need a book like that at a time like this? And then to wrap it up, Roland, of course, the SPD and Olaf Scholz, who trust me, 5-6 months ago, Elmar Brok will agree with me, who just long-time European Parliament member, nobody 6 months ago would have bet 2 cents on Olaf Scholz on being the next German chancellor, which, if nothing very, very unforeseen happens, this is what we're going to get. And I think, Olaf Scholz, you can take this as a compliment, what I'm about to say. You can take this as a criticism. I just throw it out there. I think he was as the Germans say, der lachende Dritte, the laughing third one, while Annalena Baerbock's and Armin Laschet's campaign folded throughout weeks and months. And he was very smart by adopting Chancellor Merkel's tactics of never becoming and getting too concrete about any issues. That, by the way, Elmar Brok is a tactic that has served Angela Merkel very well for 16 years, of not becoming very concrete, not making promises, taking politics on a day-by-day, or seeing it as a day-by-day discipline, and really epitomizing what Clausewitz said, making politics the art of the possible, not of wishful thinking. And now, Roland, to hand it over to you, what we have now is a Social Democratic Party, which was all left for dead 6 months ago. We have a candidate who, interestingly enough, had its own share of scandals as German finance minister. But frankly speaking, those were scandals, quote unquote, that the German public either didn't understand nor cared about. Plagiarism is something everybody on the streets gets. A laughing person amid a flood catastrophe is an image everybody gets. Try to explain Wirecard. Try to explain the Wirecard scandal to the average German. Even I, as a journalist, had to sort of immerse myself to fully understand what is happening. So we have now, that is really the short recap of what happened. Olaf Scholz as being the laughing third.
Yeah, great. Just before we turn to Georgina, one tiny follow-up. The one party you haven't mentioned is the Liberals. And there was one surprising figure in these elections. Among first voters, the two parties closely on the same level and both leading the whole pack were the Greens and the Liberals. How come the Liberals are suddenly so popular with young people in Germany?
That is, truly speaking, that is a phenomenon that I personally don't fully get. You know, because
maybe they're just cool.
You know, obviously they have a party leader, charismatic party leader, in Christian Lindner, who poses in white T-shirts and a beard and is by all accounts, objectively speaking, a good-looking man. But does that account for why the young people vote for him? I don't know. It could be even, some have suggested, even on the young part, not everybody is marching with Fridays for Future, right? I mean, I think there are young people within Germany as well who believe that climate change is important, but for whom it's also extremely important that the German economic engine keeps running.
Exactly. Let me now turn to Georgina. And in 2011, Polish then Foreign Minister Radek Sikorski famously said in Berlin, "Today I'm less afraid of German power than of German inactivity." And he almost faced a parliamentary inquiry about this because the nationalist opposition at the time hated him for saying that. He meant it at the time about the euro crisis. It was coined on Germany's austerity policy. But today, it might as well be applied, even by Radek Sikorski, also on German defense and security, on a German vision for Europe, on German innovation in the country itself. So, Georgina, what are the expectations in Paris and Brussels from this probable next government?
Do you know, I think that's extremely good strategic foresight, because that is the question that everyone in Paris is asking themselves. What is Germany going to do differently? Or is the new Chancellor simply going to solidify Merkel's legacy? And that is the question that everyone's asking. Look, if you just take a step back and consider Merkel as a leader, she was undeniably a leader in Europe. But I do wonder whether that was by necessity rather than by choice. You know, there were those very, very tricky moments in the EU's recent history, and Merkel was the one to kind of bang heads together in the council to get that approval. Is that part of her own experience domestically, where coalition building and consensus building is such a sort of everyday fact of German politics? But no one wants to step into Merkel's shoes. No one wants to play that role. And that's for two reasons. One, because there's a realization that actually, you know, you can't do anything without Germany in Europe. You need Germany to be able to move forward. And secondly, because actually it's not just about Germany, it's about all member states and increasingly the European Parliament and the European Commission agreeing, and that's a lot of people to please. On your question about what can we expect from Germany, I mean, I suspect that in the first couple of months, whoever is Chancellor, there's going to be a solidification of Merkel's legacy. But the question is, what comes next? And does that come before the French presidential election or after? Because again, although it's not just up to Germany and France to determine what happens in the EU, those countries do matter. And when I talk to people, be that in Brussels or in Paris or in other EU capitals, there's this sense of, are we going to see a more assertive Germany on defence in foreign policy? Are we going to see a green, you know, it's not just about the Chancellor actually, it's about who's going to be foreign minister, who's going to be finance minister. I mean, to pick up where Ali left off, in Paris, people are like, oh, if we have a green foreign minister, will we see a different position on China? Will we see a rejection of Nord Stream 2? If we have a finance minister who's the Liberals, are we going to see even tougher on fiscal discipline? Precisely at a point where perhaps Paris and other capitals in southern Europe would like to see a revision of certain of those fiscal rules.
Don't worry, Georgina, the Greens won't let him.
But I mean, I think there's a lot of pragmatism in Paris and in Brussels, and there is a sense that, you know what, we need to be patient, we need to let these coalition talks play out. But certainly I have, and I don't know if everyone else in this room agrees, rarely seen as many important pieces of legislation being discussed at one time in Brussels. And those discussions can go on. Merkel is going nowhere until there's a new chancellor. But to move forward, you really do need a German government in place. And so the question is, will that lead to a significant change? At the moment, I think, and I suspect, that most capitals think, let's not hope for change just yet, and let's just assume that there will be more of the status quo.
Excellent. Yes.
If I may just jump in, Georgina, you said nobody really wants to step into the shoes of Chancellor Merkel in Europe, if I understood correctly. It's my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that Emmanuel Macron has been trying exactly that, even throughout her reign. I mean, he was not shy about laying out his own vision for what Europe is supposed to be. Chancellor Merkel left him hanging. That's a different story altogether. Did not chime in his grand vision for an independent European strategic policy, strategic defense policy, and all that. But I think Emmanuel Macron was not shy, has not been shy, is not shy about trying to be one of the leading, if not the leading voice in Europe. Let me just say one thing perhaps interesting to the audience, because we're right in the midst of this conversation about foreign policy and Germany's role. For those of you who may not have been following the debates as closely as we have, we had three main television debates, and not a single, I repeat, not a single foreign policy question was asked in those three television debates. All right, so that's all you need to know as non-Germans about the priority that our campaign and our politicians placed on both foreign policy and Europe, as I may say. German leadership is something I understand, Georgina, in this part of the world too, that is very much wanted. You quoted the former Polish foreign minister, but I have two things to say about this. First of all, if and when Germany does exercise its power and flex its muscles, as it has done during the financial crisis, as it has done during the migration crisis, it's always a bit of a catch-22 game, isn't it? We've been vastly criticized for flexing our muscles, for imposing austerity budget measures. We've been severely criticized in this part of the world by Central and Eastern Europe for not closing the borders and letting Syrian refugees into our country. So you would argue it's a catch-22. The other thing and last thing I'll say about German leadership, of course, and that has nothing to do with Chancellor Merkel, it has nothing to do with Chancellor Schröder or even Chancellor Helmut Kohl. It is that German and the terms German and leadership are just, is not, historically speaking, has never been a good match. In the sense, what I'm trying to say is, when you talk about Germany, history is never far away. You are a native speaker, you only need to translate the term leader into German to know that we as Germans are not very comfortable with it. The Kerber Foundation and the Munich Security Conference had a joint poll asking, do Germans want more, should Germany accept more leadership or less? That was the question to our public. Well, guess what, Georgina? Guess what, Roland? You know the outcome. So the leadership role, I'm afraid, that Europe is expecting from us is not going to be forthcoming very soon. We are one of many, that's how we see each other, and a team player. And to get past that, to get beyond that, I think it takes a couple of more generations.
Indeed, I think one of the big problems, or even elephants in the room, I could say, is the fact that Germans still want to be a big Switzerland. And you can prove this in opinion polls. And I also want to come back to your first part of what you said. You know, asking for German leadership in some cases is just asking Germans to do or to lead on the way that the person who asks wants them to lead, right? Which is a dubious approach to leadership. But anyway, we have one question from the audience. I'm sure there are more. So Marcin Zaborowski, microphone over here, and Andrzej is next.
Thank you.
We collect.
Sure. Well, I pretty much wanted to say the same thing which was just being said, because I attended a couple of events in Warsaw, and we heard from German diplomats that there is no appetite for leadership in foreign and defense policy. I understand that the three party leaders, they agree on qualified majority voting in CFSP and EU defense policy. So, which, if it goes through, that would be quite meaningful. But given that there is no appetite, no interest in it, how attractive the post of foreign minister actually even is? Because I would imagine that the Green would actually prefer to be the climate minister, and the FDP would rather prefer to be the finance minister or the economics minister. And they'll be pushing each other to this post, which has glorified title but no influence, not least also because a lot of EU issues rest with the Kanzleramt. At the moment.
Thanks very much. Andrzej, you're next. Right here, in front of you.
Thank you, Andrzej Matyszek. I'm a journalist here from Slovakia, Daily Pravda. We have been talking about what Paris maybe is expecting and the others. So now, can you maybe tell us that what we should expect in our region? Because it's Chancellor Merkel was all the time perceived as somebody who somehow understands the region, Central Europe. I would sometimes say that maybe too much. He showed too much understanding for people like Prime Minister Orban. But general feeling was she understood the region quite well. And with a new German Chancellor, whoever it will be, it might be different. We feel that it might be different. Will it be different? Do you think that it will be different? This kind of Ostpolitik question will be different? Thank you.
All right, and the third question goes to you, sir.
Yes, hello, my name is Marco Rosso. I work for Meridiam Infrastructure from Paris. I'm half German, half Italian, so maybe a bit of context. I work in Paris and travel Europe. So I had a question that I would like the panelists to answer. Your introduction was more like, schaffen wir das? There is a fear. Is it real? I think this is something that outside of Germany is not seen so much as it is usually in Germany to see, oh, this is a great change, a big catastrophe is coming. How can we do this? I think after 16 years of government, in any other place in the world, in a democracy, you would be looking forward for the new things that are coming. And I feel that in Germany, at least, it is very much more on the fear side. Oh, can we make this?
All right, I would like to, so we have the foreign ministry question, the question of what to expect in Central Europe, and aren't Germans too apprehensive about themselves? And please take your pick. Don't answer all three, but I think the first one goes to you, definitely. Ali.
The first one, if you allow, also the third one, of course. The first one, you're absolutely right. The foreign policy post is probably not the highest price you have in coalition talks in Germany. Maybe different in other parts of Europe. Mainly for one, because for 16 years we've had a pretty efficient foreign minister, and her name was Angela Merkel. And you know, anyone who was at Verdischer Markt, anyone who was at the foreign policy, pretty much had to sort of assert herself in that role and make that voice assert. We've had, allow me that assertion, by all accounts, a somewhat weak foreign minister for the past 4 years, which we need a change in that part of the ministry. But you're absolutely right. Foreign policy is, the foreign minister was usually a post which politicians wanted because it had the highest approval ratings. Because what you did, you walked around the world, you cut ribbons and you shook hands. And as a German, you never had to take any tough decisions or declare war or rescind war or threaten people. And therefore, it was certainly an attractive post for those who wanted popularity. But right now, Georgina already alluded to it, the Greens might get first dip at this. Annalena Baerbock, Robert Habeck might be one of them. We'll see. Let me just very, very short remarks about the way the Germans perceive themselves, because I think that's indeed. Look, you know, as being half German, that Germans are extremely fond and protective of status quo. Okay, I've said it this morning to my talk to the young leaders as well. If you run for president in the United States, what is the number one term, the number one word you have to immediately utter? Change. What is the one term that gets you to lose elections in Germany? Change. Okay, so that is why you're not having any grand visions by any of the candidates. Chancellor Merkel understood that soul of the German public very well. So yes, you are right, of course. Nobody in Germany is looking for drastic change. If anything, the attitude is, can we hold it together? Can we stay at the level that we are at, being mindful that we have a Russia that is pretty assertive and aggressive towards its Central Eastern European neighbors? We have a transatlantic partner in the US that is no longer as reliable as it used to be. And we, of course, we have a more and more confident China, which we as Germans are beholden to for economic reasons. From Hungary and Poland, we haven't even in that particular discussed about. So think of it as we have our roof under our head, the world around us is tumbling, but we're saying, please, dear God, let nothing change. Quite unrealistic.
Georgina, 1 minute maximum on Central Europe.
Well, on Central Europe, I mean, I'm probably not best placed to comment on what the potential chancellor and how he sees Central Europe. But viewed from Paris, there is, I think, a recognition that perhaps some of the handling, say, for example, announcing a summit with Putin between France at a bilateral level and then going to the European Council and then going to see Central and Eastern European states probably was not the right way to do things. And so there's a recognition that actually Germany, because of its experience, because of its history, really matters in that conversation. And I really wanted to come back to you on Ali, because I completely disagree on Macron wanting to lead Europe. And the more, before moving to Paris, I was like, yeah, France really wants to lead. That's not true. France wants to be the one to have a vision for Europe. France has the ideas, but Macron doesn't think that he can achieve all of this on his own or by leading. He knows that he needs Germany. In fact, he needs all EU member states. He cannot replace Germany. And if you look at everything that's being discussed in the Council, say the Digital Services Act, the Climate Pact, the Strategic Compass, so this blueprint for European foreign policy, those are all driven by France. So actually, France is very much able to influence without leading, and it knows that if it wants to get anything done, it needs to work with other countries.
So basically, you're saying they have a vision, but they want everyone else to pick up the tab.
Well, they want to, with everyone else, to deliver on it.
There you go.
I would never say that. Elmar Brok, last question goes to you. Microphone right here in the middle.
Or to your left.
Thank you very much. First of all, one of the important outcomes of this election is that all four parties competing for that or that coalition are pro-European parties, and all the leaders. Compared to other countries, it's a real luxury problem Germany has in this case. And that means it means stability for European cause, but with differentiations. Secondly, a German chancellor will play always an important role because of the critical mass of Germany. And every chancellor has to grow in these shoes. And therefore, it doesn't matter who will become chancellor, he will grow in such shoes. But I think it's really a lesson of history Germany has. And therefore, the German chancellor will never look for leadership. Because, as Bismarck said, Germany is too small for supremacy and too big for balance. And via Europe, with shared leadership, Germany has come out of this role. And this is comfortable for our neighbors and for ourselves. And no responsible German chancellor will go out of this situation. Last point. I'm sure that the liberals will not take the foreign ministry because they went out of parliament after they took the foreign ministry. I'm absolutely sure, and I discussed it with Mr. Lindner 2 weeks ago, they will take the finance ministry.
Elmar, thank you so much. Fantastic final words. Really doesn't need it's a non sequitur. Time is up. I just want to say, as a takeaway for the whole debate, give Scholz a chance. And I'm saying this as a member of the CDU party. So, thank you so much for active participation. Thank you, Ali, Georgina, for wonderful short statements. And we'll now have, please stay put, we'll have a debate on fiscal monetary policy alignment led by Eleanor Ragg. And we leave the stage here now.
Right.
Thank you.